I stood at my front door, the cool evening air brushing against my skin, when I noticed an envelope resting on the doormat. Its presence felt out of place, like a whisper in the silence of my mundane routine. I bent down to pick it up, my heart racing slightly at the sight of the elegant, looping handwriting that sprawled across the front. A familiar chill ran down my spine as I recognized the style. It was Jason's. "Emily," I read aloud, the name rolling off my tongue like a forgotten melody. It had been months since I had heard it, months since I had allowed myself to think about him. The memories flooded back in an instant. His laughter, his smile, the way his eyes sparkled when he was excited. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the seal, a wave of nostalgia and anxiety crashing over me. "Hey, what's that?" Tyler's voice broke into my thoughts. He stood behind me, his brow furrowed with curiosity. Tyler had been my rock since everything happened, always there to pull me back from the edge when I was lost in my thoughts. "It's a letter," I stammered, still staring at the envelope as if it might ignite into flames. I turned it over, searching for a clue that might explain how it had ended up on my doorstep. "From who?" he asked, taking a step closer. I bit my lip, unsure of how to respond. It's from Jason." Tyler's expression shifted. A mix of concern and skepticism etched on his face. "Emily, are you sure you want to open that? You know how things ended. It's been hard enough for you without digging up the past." "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "but I can't help but think it might be important. What if it's something I need to hear?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I'll support you no matter what, but just promise me you won't get too caught up in it. You need to take care of yourself." With a nod, I took a deep breath and broke the seal. As I unfolded the letter, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The words danced before my eyes. "Emily, if you're reading this, I need you to come to the old mansion. There are things I need to share, things that were left unsaid. You deserve to know the truth." Jason, the words resonated within me, igniting a spark of curiosity and dread. What could he possibly want to tell me? I muttered, more to myself than to Tyler. "Are you really considering going there?" Tyler asked, concern lacing his voice. "You know how eerie that place is. It's been abandoned for years, and it's not like we have any idea what's waiting for us." "I can't ignore this, Tyler. It's Jason. It feels like a chance to finally understand what happened." I looked up at him, searching for understanding in his eyes. "Please, I need to do this." After a long moment of silence, he finally nodded. "All right, I'll go with you. Just promise me you'll be careful." The ride to the mansion was filled with a tension that seemed to thicken the air around us. I could barely focus on the road, my mind racing with thoughts of Jason and the life we could have had if things had turned out differently. The memories were bittersweet, each one a reminder of the light that had been snuffed out too soon. As we approached the mansion, the imposing structure loomed in the distance, its dark silhouette against the twilight sky sending a shiver down my spine. The windows were like hollow eyes, staring out at us as if the house itself were alive. I instinctively grasped onto Tyler's arm, my heart pounding in my chest. "It looks even creepier than I remember," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, it definitely has a vibe," Tyler replied, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I hesitated, my gaze locked on the entrance. "I have to. I need closure, Tyler. I owe it to Jason." With a nod of determination, we stepped out of the car and made our way to the front door. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could hear the faint sound of laughter and music drifting from inside, an eerie contrast to the stillness that surrounded us. It felt like we were stepping into another world, one filled with secrets and shadows. As we crossed the threshold, an overwhelming sense of nostalgia washed over me. The interior was dimly lit, the faded wallpaper peeling in places, and the scent of dust and decay hung in the air. My heart raced as I took in the familiar surroundings, my mind flooding with memories of happier times. "Emily, look at this," Tyler called, gesturing towards a group of guests milling about. Their faces were a mix of joy and sorrow, as if they were trapped in a moment of reminiscence. One woman caught my eye, Sarah. She was standing alone, her expression distant and haunted. "Tyler, that's Sarah," I said, my voice trembling slightly. She was one of Jason's closest friends. "Do you want to talk to her?" Tyler asked, glancing between Sarah and me. I don't know," I admitted. "What do I even say?" Before I could answer, Sarah turned to me, her eyes widening in recognition. "Emily?" she breathed, stepping forward. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Hi, Sarah," I replied, forcing a smile. "I found an invitation at my door, and, well, I felt like I had to come." Her expression shifted, a mix of sadness and understanding in her gaze. "I get it. We all have our reasons for being here. It's hard, you know?" I nodded, my throat tightening as memories of Jason flooded back. "Yeah, it is. I miss him so much." "I do too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was everything to us. There's so much we didn't get to say." "I found a letter from him," I confessed, unable to hold back the words. "He wanted me to come here. He said there were things that needed to be shared." Sarah's eyes widened, and she glanced around as if searching for eavesdroppers. "Then you might be in for a long night. There are things we all need to confront, things we've buried deep." I exchanged a glance with Tyler, who seemed to sense the weight of Sarah's words. "What do you mean?" he asked cautiously. "There are truths about that night, about Jason, that no one has been able to face," Sarah replied, her voice trembling. "It's like we're all haunted by it, and coming here is like opening old wounds." As we spoke, the atmosphere in the mansion shifted, the laughter and music fading into the background. The weight of unspoken words hung in the air, pressing down on us like a thick fog. I felt a sense of urgency rising within me, a need to uncover the secrets that lay buried beneath the surface. "Let's explore," I suggested, my voice steady but filled with determination. "Maybe we can find answers together." Tyler nodded, and Sarah hesitated before following us. We began to wander through the dimly lit rooms, each one filled with remnants of the past. Old photographs adorned the walls, capturing moments of joy and laughter that felt like a lifetime ago. With every step, I felt the past closing in around me, the memories both comforting and painful. "Look at this," Tyler said, pointing to a photo of Jason with a group of friends, his smile bright and carefree. "He looks so happy." "Yeah," I replied, my heart aching. He was always the life of the party. As we continued to explore, I found myself drawn to a small room at the back of the mansion. The door was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open, revealing a space filled with clutter and shadows. My breath caught in my throat as I spotted a diary lying on the floor, its pages partially burned. "Guys, come here," I called, picking it up with trembling hands. This belonged to Jason. Tyler and Sarah rushed over, their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern. "What does it say?" Tyler asked, peering over my shoulder. As I flipped through the pages, I felt a chill run down my spine. He mentioned something about a hidden truth regarding the night he died. "What?" Sarah gasped, her eyes widening. "We need to read more." I turned the pages carefully, my heart pounding as I sought out the relevant sections. He talks about feeling isolated, about secrets that were tearing him apart. I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Secrets?" Tyler echoed, his brow furrowing. "What kind of secrets?" "There's something about a triangle," I murmured, skimming through the entries. He felt caught between two people, and it was driving him crazy. "Do you think it could be about Sarah?" Tyler asked, glancing at her. I don't know," I said, my heart racing. "But we need to find out more." As we delved deeper into the diary, the atmosphere in the mansion shifted once again. An eerie stillness enveloped us, and the laughter from earlier faded into an unsettling silence. The weight of our discoveries hung in the air, filling the room with an unshakable tension. Maybe we should find the others and share what as rain began to fall lightly outside. I found myself standing at my front door, staring down at a curious envelope that had been slipped under it. The paper was thick, and the writing on it was elegant, almost like something out of a vintage novel. My heart raced as I recognized the familiar, swirling script. It was Jason's. A wave of nostalgia washed over me, followed by an unsettling mixture of dread and curiosity. I picked up the envelope gingerly, as if it might dissolve into dust at my touch. Inside was a simple invitation to a gathering at a mansion on the outskirts of town. "Join us for a night of remembrance," it said. Just reading those words made my stomach twist. Jason had been gone for months, and the memories of him still lingered like a haunting melody I couldn't shake. "Emily, you home?" Tyler's voice echoed from the hallway. He was my best friend and had been my rock since Jason's tragic death. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart, and called back, "Yeah, in here." He stepped into the room, his brow furrowed in concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost. What's wrong?" I held out the envelope, my hand trembling slightly. "I found this at the door. It's an invitation to a party at the old mansion. It's from Jason." Tyler's eyes widened, and for a moment, he didn't say anything. I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "Are you serious? Party? Who even throws a party like that after?" I know, I interrupted, feeling defensive. "But I can't just ignore it. I need to know why they're doing this. Could be important." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Emily, you don't have to do this. It might just open old wounds. You're still healing." "Maybe," I admitted, "but I can't help it. I feel like I owe it to Jason to go, to understand what happened." Tyler considered my words for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, if you feel that strongly, I'll go with you. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think it's a bad idea." The tension in the air began to lift just a little as we made plans. Tyler was always cautious, often leaning toward being overly protective, but I appreciated him for it. We spent the rest of the afternoon preparing for the evening, gathering whatever courage we could muster. As we approached the mansion later that night, I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine, even though it wasn't particularly cold outside. The old house loomed ahead, its windows dark but for a flicker of light inside. It was as if the house itself was breathing, watching us with an unyielding gaze. I could hear the distant sound of laughter and music, but it felt eerie rather than welcoming. "Are you ready?" Tyler's voice broke through my thoughts. I nodded, though my heart raced in my chest. As we stepped through the heavy wooden door, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence that hung in the air like a thick fog. We were greeted by a group of familiar faces, but instead of the joy I expected, there was an overwhelming sense of sadness etched into each expression. It was as if the memories of Jason weighed heavily on everyone's shoulders. I caught sight of Sarah, one of Jason's closest friends, and my heart sank. She looked as if she had been crying. Her eyes were puffy and red-rimmed. "Emily," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think you'd come." "I needed to," I replied softly, feeling the weight of our shared grief. "I think we all do." As we moved further into the mansion, the atmosphere only grew tenser. The walls were lined with photographs of Jason, smiling, laughing, living. Each picture was a painful reminder of what we had lost. The air felt thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. It was stifling. "Let's check out the other rooms," Tyler suggested, trying to lighten the mood. He was always good at that, even when things felt heavy. I followed him into the next room, which was filled with memorabilia from Jason's life. There were trophies from his soccer games, a guitar he used to play, and various awards he had earned over the years. "Look at this," Tyler said, picking up a small trophy engraved with Jason's name. He was so proud of this win. "Yeah," I murmured, my throat tightening. He worked so hard for it. As we continued to explore, I noticed a journal partially hidden behind a stack of old books on a dusty shelf. I pulled it out, my heart racing as I flipped through the pages. The ink was smudged, and some of the entries were barely legible, but one entry caught my eye. It read, "There's a truth buried deep in this night that I can't escape. I feel like I'm losing myself." "What did you find?" Tyler asked, peering over my shoulder. "It's Jason's journal," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "He talks about some truth he couldn't escape. It feels ominous." "Maybe we should keep looking," Tyler said cautiously. "If there's something here, we need to uncover it." As we went deeper into the mansion, I felt the weight of the past pressing down on me. Each room held more memories, more echoes of laughter that had long since faded. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not just here to remember Jason, but to confront something much darker. "Emily, look at this," Tyler called from another room. I hurried to his side and gasped as I saw what lay before us. A wall covered in photographs, each one capturing a moment from Jason's life, but alongside them were notes scribbled in frantic handwriting. They detailed the nights leading up to his death, and my heart sank as I read snippets of what he had felt. Confusion, heartache, loneliness. "This is too much," I whispered, tears filling my eyes. "I can't believe he felt this way. I had no idea he was struggling so much," Tyler said, his voice heavy with emotion. "We should have been there for him." I shook my head, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "It's not our fault. We didn't know." At that moment, a loud clap of thunder echoed outside, startling us both. The storm that had been brewing earlier now unleashed its fury, the rain pounding against the windows. It felt like the mansion itself was reacting to our discoveries, amplifying the tension that already hung in the air. "Let's find the others," Tyler suggested, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "We need to talk about what we found." As we made our way back to the main hall, I could feel the atmosphere shifting again. The guests were beginning to murmur among themselves, their expressions a mix of nostalgia and grief. I glanced at Sarah, who was now standing with a group of people, her face pale. "Emily," she called out, her voice shaking slightly. "Can we talk?" "Of course," I replied, stepping closer. As I approached, I could see the distress etched on her features. "What's wrong?" I didn't realize how many of us were affected by Jason's death," she confessed, glancing at the others around her. "I thought I was the only one who felt this way." I could feel the weight of her words, a shared understanding of the pain that had brought us all together. "We all loved him," I said softly. "We're all hurting." As the storm raged outside, the emotional tension inside the mansion reached a breaking point. Old wounds were being opened, and the air crackled with unspoken truths. I knew that whatever revelations lay ahead would change everything for us all. The party was in full swing, a cacophony of laughter and music filling the air, but I was lost in a fog of memories and emotions. Every corner of the grand mansion seemed to whisper Jason's name, reminding me of moments we shared that felt both distant and painfully close. As I navigated through the crowd, I felt the weight of his absence more than ever. Are you okay?" Tyler asked, his voice cutting through my reverie. He had been by my side since we arrived, ever the supportive friend, though I could see the worry etched on his face. "I don't know, Tyler. Everything just feels overwhelming," I confessed, glancing around at the other guests. Their faces were a mixture of nostalgia and grief, as if they were all trapped in a time loop, forever haunted by what had happened that night. "Maybe we should try to find out more about Jason. There's got to be something here that can help us understand," he suggested, his brow furrowing in thought. I nodded, grateful for his presence, even if the task ahead felt daunting. We made our way through the dimly lit halls, the shadows flickering as candlelight danced against the walls. Suddenly, a distant clap of thunder echoed outside, causing me to shiver. It was as if the storm brewing outside mirrored the turmoil within the mansion, intensifying the sense of claustrophobia that was starting to settle over me. As we explored, my heart raced at every turn. Old photographs lined the walls, capturing moments of joy that now felt like a cruel joke. There was Jason, laughing with friends, his eyes sparkling with life. I could almost hear his laughter, but the echo was tainted with loss. "Look at this," Tyler said, crouching down to examine a small bookshelf cluttered with dusty trinkets. He pulled out a half-burned diary, the edges singed, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I could see Jason's handwriting peeking through the charred pages. "What does it say?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Tyler flipped through the pages, his expression growing more serious with each line. It mentioned something about a hidden truth, about the night he died. My stomach dropped. "What do you think it means?" "I don't know, but we need to find out. It's like he's trying to tell us something," he replied, determination flickering in his eyes. Before I could respond, the sound of laughter and music grew louder, pulling me back to the present. I could see groups of people gathering in the main room, their voices rising in excitement, but the atmosphere felt charged, almost electric, as if the house itself was alive with tension. "Let's go back," I suggested, my instincts screaming that we needed to stick together. As we stepped back into the throng of people, the mood shifted suddenly. As I scanned the room, I spotted Sarah. She stood by the bar, her face pale and drawn, her eyes darting around as if searching for something or someone. The moment our eyes met, a flicker of recognition crossed her face, quickly replaced by a shadow of guilt. I felt a pang of sorrow for her, but also an overwhelming urge to confront her. "Emily," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Neither did I replied, my tone sharper than intended. But I needed to understand what happened to Jason. Her gaze dropped, and I could see the emotion swirling within her. "I loved him, you know. I never wanted things to end like this." "Then why didn't you tell him?" I pressed, anger bubbling beneath my skin. "Why did he have to die without knowing how you felt?" Sarah flinched, her hands trembling slightly. "There was so much going on. I was scared. There was another woman, and I thought he chose her. I thought it was over." My heart sank. I felt Tyler's presence beside me, a steadying force as I tried to process her words. "You didn't think to tell him how you felt? To fight for him?" "I was too late," she admitted, tears brimming in her eyes. "I wanted to be there for him that night, but I got into a fight with her. Before she could finish, a loud crash interrupted us. The sound of glass shattering drew everyone's attention, and I turned to see a group of guests arguing. Voices raised, accusations flying, as secrets began to unravel in the heat of the moment. "Why didn't you just tell him the truth?" one of them yelled, pointing at another. "Because I was afraid. You think I wanted this?" The other shouted back, their voice cracking with emotion. "Afraid? We all were," Tyler exclaimed, stepping forward. "We were all afraid of losing him, and look where that got us." My heart raced as I watched the scene unfold, the tension thickening the air around us. I felt helpless, torn between wanting to intervene and the overwhelming sense of despair that settled in my chest. "Stop it!" I shouted, the words bursting out before I could hold them back. "This isn't helping anyone." But my voice was drowned out by the chaos, the arguments escalating as each person tried to shift the blame, to ease their own guilt. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of sorrow, the weight of Jason's absence suffocating. "Emily, let's get out of here," Tyler urged, grabbing my arm gently. "We can't help them if they're not ready to face the truth." I wanted to argue, to stay and try to make sense of everything, but I felt beaten down by the emotions swirling around me. I nodded, allowing him to lead me away from the chaos. As we stepped outside onto the porch, the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, mingling with the tension that hung in the air. I leaned against the railing, taking a deep breath, trying to ground myself. "I just wanted to find some answers," I murmured, staring out into the darkness. "Sometimes the answers hurt more than the questions," Tyler replied softly, standing beside me. "But we can't ignore what happened. We owe it to Jason to figure this out." I turned to him, gratitude washing over me. "You're right. We have to keep searching, no matter how painful it gets." As the storm raged on, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something monumental, something that could finally bring closure, or tear us apart even further. With each clap of thunder, I felt the weight of the past bearing down on us, urging us to confront the truths we had buried for too long. The air felt heavy as I stepped into the dimly lit mansion, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Tyler and I had arrived at the gathering, a sort of memorial party for Jason, a name I couldn't shake from my mind. It had only been a couple of months since his tragic death, yet it felt like a lifetime. The invite had appeared out of nowhere, tucked under my door, adorned with an elegant script that instantly transported me back to memories that I both cherished and dreaded. "Do you really think this is a good idea?" Tyler asked hesitantly, glancing around at the gathered guests. Their faces were masked with sorrow, their laughter strained and hollow. I could feel his skepticism radiating off him, but deep down, I needed to be here. I needed answers, closure. "I don't know, but I have to find out what happened," I replied, trying to project more confidence than I felt. "There's something unfinished about all of this." Tyler sighed, his expression softening. "Okay, I'm with you, but if it gets too intense, we leave. All right?" I nodded, grateful for his support. As we moved deeper into the mansion, the atmosphere grew thicker, almost palpable. It was as if the house itself was breathing, alive with the whispers of the past. The walls, adorned with faded photographs and relics of a time when laughter filled the rooms, felt like they were watching us, judging our presence. "Look at this," Tyler said, pointing at a large photo of Jason, his smile infectious even in the grainy image. Standing beside him were a group of friends, faces I vaguely recognized but couldn't place. I felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with sadness. Why hadn't I seen him in those final days? Why hadn't I reached out? As we wandered through the mansion, we stumbled into a parlor room. The air was thick with unspoken words and regrets. A small group of guests huddled together, their conversations hushed and tense. Among them was Sarah, Jason's former girlfriend, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. She looked up as we entered, a flicker of recognition crossing her face before she quickly looked away. "Emily?" she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to reach out to her, to share in the grief we both felt, but the weight of the moment held me back. "Let's keep looking," Tyler suggested, and I nodded, feeling the urgency to uncover whatever secrets lay hidden in this house. As we explored, we found remnants of Jason's life scattered throughout the mansion. A guitar leaning against a wall, dusty but somehow still echoing his spirit. A trophy gleamed under the dim light, a testament to his achievements. But it was the diary that Tyler found in a small, charred box that sent a shiver down my spine. "Emily, come here," he called, his voice strained with a mix of curiosity and concern. I hurried over to him, my heart thudding in my chest. The diary was partially burned, its pages brittle and yellowed. Yet, through the scorched edges, I could make out Jason's handwriting. "There's a truth hidden beneath the surface," Tyler read aloud, his brow furrowing. "I can't keep it to myself anymore. It's killing me inside." My breath caught in my throat. "What truth?" I whispered, more to myself than to Tyler. The tension in the room thickened, the air becoming almost electric with unspoken fears. "We need to figure this out." Whatever he was trying to say, Tyler trailed off, his gaze distant. I could see the gears turning in his mind, the realization dawning that our quest for answers was just beginning. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted as a storm began to brew outside. The wind howled, rattling the windows and sending a chill through the mansion. I could feel the pressure building in the air, intensifying the claustrophobic feeling that had settled over us since we arrived. The shadows cast by the flickering candlelight danced ominously on the walls, as if they were alive, whispering secrets from the past. In the midst of the growing tempest, I caught glimpses of Jason's spirit in my mind, his laughter ringing in my ears, his eyes sparkling with life. But those images were tainted by the reality of his absence. I felt a deep ache in my chest as memories flooded over me, both beautiful and heart-wrenching. "Emily, are you okay?" Tyler's voice broke through my reverie, pulling me back to the present. He looked concerned, His brow furrowed as he searched my face. I'm just thinking about him, I admitted, my voice trembling. I can't help but wonder what he was going through. Why didn't he reach out to me? Tyler placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You can't blame yourself for what happened. We didn't know. But his words felt hollow, echoing the doubts I was wrestling with. As the storm raged outside, the tension among the guests grew palpable. I could hear snippets of conversations, fragments of accusations, and hushed whispers that hinted at deeper secrets. It was then that Tyler approached one of Jason's friends, a tall guy with dark circles under his eyes. What really happened the night Jason died? Tyler demanded, his voice firm. The question hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. The friend looked uneasy, glancing around as if assessing how much he could reveal. He was involved with someone. A love triangle, you know? Sarah and another girl. It was messy. Messy? Tyler echoed incredulously. What do you mean? Before the friend could respond, a sudden commotion broke out among the guests. Voices rose in anger, accusations flying like daggers. An argument erupted, fueled by grief and confusion, the air thick with unresolved emotions. I felt lost amidst the chaos, a spectator to a drama that was unraveling before me, a drama that had been building long before Jason's death. Guys, please, I called out, desperate to intervene. This isn't the time for fighting. But my voice fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the cacophony of hurt and betrayal. In that moment, I felt utterly alone, caught between the past and the present, haunted by memories of a friendship that had been so close yet so distant. As the storm continued to rage outside, I realized that the true tempest lay within the hearts of those who had loved and lost Jason. Each of us carried a burden of guilt, regret, and unanswered questions, and it was becoming increasingly clear that we were all connected by a web of unresolved emotions. Just when I thought the fighting would escalate further, the lights flickered ominously, casting erratic shadows in the room. A collective hush fell over us, the tension palpable as we all turned our gazes toward the source of the disturbance. Did you feel that? Someone whispered, fear creeping into their voice. I felt it too, a chill that crept up my spine, an unsettling presence that seemed to envelop us all. Tyler's grip on my arm tightened as he scanned the room. We need to figure this out. We can't let Jason's memory be tainted by this chaos. I nodded, determination washing over me. You're right. We owe it to him to understand what happened. Together, we resolved to uncover the truth, to face whatever lay hidden in the shadows of the mansion, even if it meant confronting our own demons along the way. The atmosphere in the mansion was thick with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. I could feel it in the air, a palpable weight that pressed down on my chest as I stood in the dimly lit hallway, surrounded by the faces of people who had once been so vibrant and alive. Now, they wore expressions of grief and regret, their eyes clouded with memories of Jason. It was as if the walls themselves were listening, waiting for us to confront the truths we had buried so deep. Emily, Tyler whispered beside me, his voice barely audible over the distant sounds of laughter and music that seemed to echo from somewhere deep within the house. Are you sure you want to do this? Feels different. I nodded, although uncertainty gnawed at me. The invitation had arrived like a ghost itself, a reminder of everything I had tried to forget. It was Jason's handwriting, unique, almost beautiful, and it had tugged at something deep within me. Curiosity, yes, but also a longing for closure. We need to understand what happened that night, Tyler. I can't keep living with this weight. We made our way through the crowd, my heart racing as I caught snippets of conversations around us. Laughter mingled with hushed whispers. It was a strange dichotomy, and it only heightened my sense of dread. Suddenly, a familiar face caught my eye, Sarah. Her expression twisted into one of shock as Nasso's Allhair's Essien Contraram. For a moment, time seemed to freeze, and I felt the air grow colder. Emily, she said, stepping towards me, her voice trembling. I didn't expect to see you here. Neither did I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. It's complicated. I know, she said, glancing away as if she was battling her own demons. Jason, he meant a lot to us. All of us. Her voice broke slightly, and I could see the pain etched on her face. It mirrored my own, and for a brief moment, I felt a connection with her. A shared grief, a mutual understanding of loss. Before I could respond, Tyler squeezed my arm gently, bringing me back to the present. "Let's keep moving," he suggested, his tone firm yet kind. We stepped away from Sarah, who looked back at me with an expression that was both apologetic and haunted. As we ventured deeper into the mansion, the memories began to flood back. Each photograph and object we encountered was a reminder of Jason's absence. A framed picture of him with his goofy smile, surrounded by friends, sent a pang through my heart. I could almost hear his laughter echoing in the halls. I wished desperately that I could go back to those days, before everything had gone wrong. "Look at this," Tyler said suddenly, holding up a diary. Its edges singed and pages curled. "It's Jason's, partially burned or something." His brow furrowed as he flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the handwriting that was so familiar to me. "There's something here about a hidden truth regarding the night he died." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean? What did he write?" "Just bits and pieces. It doesn't make much sense," he said, his voice low as he continued to read. "But it talks about guilt and secrets, and how he felt trapped." He looked up at me, his eyes wide with realization. "We need to find out what this means." "Agreed," I replied, feeling the urgency of the situation settle over me like a heavy blanket. "But let's be careful. We already know how fragile this group is." As we wandered through the mansion, I could feel the storm brewing outside, the wind howling as it rattled the windows. It was as if the elements themselves mirrored the chaos within us. I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were being watched, that the mansion itself was alive, filled with memories and emotions waiting to be unleashed. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I shivered involuntarily. "Tyler, do you feel that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, it's like something is here," he replied, looking around as if expecting to see a figure emerge from the darkness. "We should stick together." We continued exploring, but the air grew heavier, charged with a sense of impending confrontation. Guests were beginning to gather in clusters, their conversations growing more animated and tense. I could hear snippets of discussions about Jason, about the night of his death. Words like accident, guilt, and regret floated through the air. "Emily!" Tyler shouted suddenly, drawing my attention. I turned to find him engaged in a heated conversation with one of Jason's former friends. He was involved in some kind of love triangle, Tyler explained, his voice edged with disbelief. "What do you mean?" I interjected, my heart racing. "What do you know about that?" "Jason was seeing Sarah, but there was another girl too. I think it was someone from school," he said, his eyes narrowing. This could explain a lot. The tension in the room escalated. I could see Sarah across the room, her face pale as she overheard our conversation. A few guests began to argue, their voices rising above the music. The atmosphere crackled with unexpressed emotions, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "Tyler, we need to calm this down," I urged, stepping towards the growing crowd. "This isn't helping anyone." "Emily, they're all holding onto their own guilt," he replied, his voice firm. "It's like they need to fight to release it." As I tried to intervene, the arguments only grew louder, and I felt increasingly isolated, standing in the middle of this storm of emotions. "Please," I shouted, but my voice was lost in the chaos. "We need to talk about Jason, not about each other's mistakes." But my words fell on deaf ears. People continued to shout, blaming one outro, pointing fingers. I felt my heart race. I was losing control of the situation. This wasn't what I had envisioned when I came here. I just wanted answers, not more pain. In the midst of the turmoil, Sarah broke free from the group and approached me, her eyes filled with tears. "Emily, please, I never meant for any of this to happen, she said, her voice cracking. Jason and I had plans that night. We were supposed to meet, but there was a fight with the other girl. She paused, biting her lip. I didn't know he would be gone. My heart ached for her, but anger bubbled up inside me. You could have told him. You could have told anyone, I exclaimed, the frustration spilling over. Do you have any idea what this did to us? To all of us? I know, she whispered, her gaze dropping. I know, but I was scared. We all were. Jason was caught in the middle of it all. I just wish I could go back and change things. As we stood there, surrounded by the chaos, a figure emerged from the shadows, a specter of Jason himself. My breath hitched in my throat as I locked eyes with him. He looked just as I remembered, the same playful smile, but there was an intensity in his gaze that sent chills down my spine. Emily, his voice echoed, soft yet powerful. You need to confront your own choices. You have to face the truth. I felt my heart race as I gazed into his eyes, which seemed to pierce through me, revealing my deepest fears and regrets. I never wanted to lose you, I choked out, tears streaming down my cheeks. I was terrified. I didn't know how to help you. His expression shifted, filled with sadness. But you have to understand that holding onto your fears will only keep you trapped. You have to let go. Let go? How do I do that? You'll figure it out, he replied, his voice fading into the air. But first, you must confront the pain that binds you. As I stood there, the voices of the others faded away, and the weight of the moment enveloped me. I felt torn between my past and the reality of the present, and I knew that it was time to face the truth, not just for Jason, but for myself as well. The storm outside raged like a tempestuous beast, the wind howling through the trees surrounding the mansion. As I stood in the dimly lit room with Tyler, the air felt thick with an unshakable sense of dread. Every tick of the clock echoed like a heartbeat, reminding me that time was slipping away. The whispers of the past seemed to swirl around us, beckoning us toward truths that had long been buried. Do you think we're really going to find anything here? Tyler asked, his voice barely above a whisper as he scanned the flickering shadows on the walls. I could feel his skepticism, but beneath it lay an undercurrent of fear. He had always been the rational one, the logical thinker, whereas I was the one who believed in the unseen, the unexplainable. I have to believe we will, I replied, gripping the edge of the table where we'd laid out Jason's partially burned diary. The edges of the pages were blackened and crumbled, but I could still make out some words. He mentioned a secret, Tyler, something that could explain everything. Like what? A hidden stash of drugs? A financial scandal? His sarcasm was evident, but I could see the flicker of curiosity in his eyes. He was drawn to the mystery, even if he was reluctant to admit it. Something darker, I said, my voice trembling as I opened the diary to the page where the ink had barely survived the flames. He wrote about an accident, something he witnessed that night. Tyler stepped closer, his brow furrowing as he leaned over the diary. You think that's what led to his death? I don't know, but it has to mean something, I insisted, flipping through the pages with trembling fingers. The diary was filled with Jason's hopes and fears, and the closer I got to the end, the more frantic his writing became. He felt isolated, guilty, like he was hiding something. Maybe he was just being dramatic. You know how he was, Tyler said, folding his arms. No, Tyler, this feels different, I argued, feeling the weight of the room pressing down on me. He was trying to tell us something. I can feel it. Just then, a loud crack of thunder shook the house, and the lights flickered above us. I glanced at Tyler, who looked equally startled. The atmosphere grew dense, almost electric, as if the very walls were charged with the energy of the storm outside. I think we should find the others, Tyler suggested, his voice laced with urgency. If something is happening, we need to be together. Yeah, you're right, I nodded, reluctantly tearing my gaze away from the diary. But what if we don't find anyone? What if we're alone in this? A piercing scream echoed from the hallway, sending chills racing down my spine. Without thinking, I grabbed Tyler's arm and we rushed out of the room, the diary forgotten in our haste. We navigated through the dimly lit corridors, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. The laughter and music from earlier had vanished, replaced by an unsettling silence that felt suffocating. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each thump echoing in my ears. As we turned a corner, we stumbled upon a group of guests huddled together, their faces pale and drawn. Sarah was among them, her eyes wide with terror. "What happened?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It's the house. It's alive," Sarah breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I swear I heard Jason's voice calling to us." "Jason?" Tyler echoed, his skepticism momentarily forgotten. "What do you mean?" "Something is wrong," Sarah continued, her voice trembling. "I saw him, right there in the corner of the room. He looked sad, desperate." "Are you sure it wasn't just your imagination?" Tyler asked, his brow furrowing. "No, I know what I saw," Sarah snapped, her frustration boiling over. "He was reaching out to me, like he wanted to tell me something." "Tell us what?" I pressed, my curiosity piqued despite the fear clawing at my insides. "About the accident," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He was involved in something he never told me. I think it's why he died." Tyler exchanged a glance with me, the realization dawning on both of us. "We need to find out what he was hiding," I said, determination rising within me like a flame. "Where do we even start?" Sarah asked, glancing nervously around as if expecting Jason to appear at any moment. "The diary," I replied, recalling the last thing we'd been working on. "It mentioned an accident. If we can figure out what he meant, maybe we can understand why he's here." "Let's go back," Tyler urged, leading the way as we retraced our steps toward the room where we'd left the diary. But as we moved, the atmosphere shifted again. The air felt charged, electric, almost pulsating with energy. I could hear whispers now, soft and haunting, echoing through the halls. It was as if the house itself was alive, urging us to listen, to uncover the truths hidden within its walls. "Do you hear that?" I whispered, my heart racing. "What?" Tyler replied, his brow furrowing in confusion. "The voices," I said, straining to catch the words that seemed to float just beyond my reach. "It's like they're calling to us." "Emily, we need to focus," Tyler said firmly, shaking his head. "Let's just get back to the diary." As we pushed open the door to the room, I felt a chill run down my spine. The diary lay exactly where we'd left it, but the atmosphere had changed. The shadows seemed deeper, more pronounced, and the air felt thick with unspoken words. "Okay, let's see what we can find," Tyler said, stepping over to the table. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the hastily scribbled notes. "Here," I said, pointing to a passage that had caught my eye. "This part, I witnessed something terrible that night. I didn't want to be a part of it, but I was." "What does that even mean?" Tyler asked, frustration evident in his voice. "I don't know," I admitted, feeling a wave of helplessness wash over me. "But it has to connect to the accident. He was there, Tyler. He saw something happen. Maybe he was just being paranoid," Tyler suggested, but I could see the doubt creeping into his voice. "Or maybe he was trying to protect someone," I countered, my mind racing. What if he felt responsible for something he didn't do? Just then, the lights flickered violently, and I felt a surge of energy pulse through the room. "What was that?" I gasped, my eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," Tyler shouted, his voice rising above the growing chaos. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest. "Emily, we need to leave." "No, we can't leave yet," I pleaded, feeling an overwhelming urge to uncover the truth. "We have to know what happened to him." Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us with a deafening bang, trapping us inside. I jumped, my heart racing as panic set in. "What's happening?" I cried, my voice rising in pitch. "Emily, this isn't good." Tyler shouted, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Listen, I urged, focusing on the whispers that seemed to crescendo around us. They're trying to tell us something. And then, as if responding to my plea, a figure materialized in the corner of the room. My heart dropped as I recognized him, Jason, but not as I remembered. His expression was one of sorrow, his eyes filled with a deep, haunting pain that sent chills down my spine. Jason, I breathed, stepping forward in disbelief. He looked at me, his gaze piercing through the veil of reality. Emily, he whispered, his voice a mere echo. You have to understand. Understand what? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. What happened to you? He opened his mouth to speak, but the words were drowned out by the raging storm outside. The room shook, and the lights flickered violently, casting eerie shadows across Jason's face. Please, I cried out, reaching for him. Tell us what you need us to know. But just as quickly as he appeared, he began to fade, the shadows swallowing him whole. You have to find the truth, he murmured, his voice growing fainter. Before it's too late. Wait, don't go, I shouted, but the figure vanished, leaving me standing in the dimly lit room, heart pounding and breathless. What just happened? Tyler's voice broke through my shock, and I turned to him, my eyes wide with fear and confusion. I think he was trying to tell us something. I stammered, my mind racing. He needs us to find out what happened that night. Emily, this isn't safe, Tyler argued, glancing nervously at the door, which remained ominously shut. We should get out of here, now. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something monumental. No, Tyler, we can't leave yet. Not until we uncover the truth. The storm continued to howl outside, and the whispers grew louder, urging us as the gathering in the mansion grew increasingly tense. I found myself standing in the center of the living room, surrounded by familiar faces twisted in grief and regret. The air was heavy with unspoken words, and I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on us all. Tyler stood beside me, his brow furrowed in concentration, as if he were trying to decipher the hidden meanings in the shadows that danced around us. I can't believe we're actually doing this, Tyler murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. What if it doesn't work? What if we just make things worse? I turned to him, searching his eyes for reassurance. We have to try, Tyler. This is the only way to find peace for Jason, and for us. My heart raced at the thought of confronting the ghosts that lingered in this place, but I knew we couldn't leave without attempting to make sense of everything that had happened. As we gathered the others in the room, I noticed Sarah leaning against the wall, her eyes hollow and distant. The sight of her made my chest tighten. She had been so close to Jason, yet she seemed lost in her own sorrow. Sarah, I called gently, we're about to do something important. Will you join us? She looked up, hesitating for a moment before nodding slowly. I need to do this. For him. Her voice was barely audible, but there was a determination in her gaze that sparked a flicker of hope within me. We arranged ourselves in a circle, each person clutching an object that reminded them of Jason. A picture, a bracelet, a letter. I held onto a small, frayed photograph of him and me at the beach, sun-kissed and carefree, a stark contrast to the heaviness that surrounded us now. Everyone, close your eyes, I instructed, trying to steady my trembling hands. Let's take a moment to remember Jason, to remember the good times and the love we shared. As we closed our eyes, I could hear the soft rustle of fabric and the gentle inhalation of breath from those around me. My heart began to beat in rhythm with the memories flooding my mind. I pictured Jason's laughter, the way his eyes sparkled when he was excited, and the warmth of his presence. I focused on those moments, hoping to channel them into something tangible. Jason, I spoke softly, feeling the tears prick at my eyes. If you're here with us, please know that we miss you. We're sorry for everything, for not being there when you needed us. The room fell silent, and for a moment, I felt a chill sweep through the air, causing me to shiver. I opened my eyes and exchanged a glance with Tyler, who looked equally unsettled. "Did you feel that?" he whispered. "Yeah," I replied, my voice shaking. "It's like he's here." Suddenly, a flicker of light illuminated the room, and we all gasped as visions began to swirl around us. Images of Jason's life flashed before our eyes. His first bike ride, school dances, moments of joy that felt so vibrant yet so far removed from the pain we were all experiencing now. "Remember when he won that championship game?" I said, breaking the silence. He was so proud, like he could conquer the world. Tyler nodded, his expression somber. "He always had that fire in him, but it feels like we let that fire go out." At that moment, a voice echoed in the room, soft yet haunting. "You all need to forgive yourselves." We looked around, startled, trying to pinpoint the source of the voice. It was as if the mansion itself was alive, resonating with the emotions we had brought to the surface. Who are you?" I stammered, my heart racing. "I am Jason," the voice replied, and I felt a rush of warmth envelop me, as if he were standing right beside me. "I don't want you to suffer because of my death. I want you to understand what truly happened." "Jason," I called out, feeling a strange mix of hope and fear. "Is it really you?" "Yes, Emily," he said, his voice now clearer. "But you have to see the truth. The truth about that night." The atmosphere shifted, and the visions morphed into darker memories. I saw flashes of the argument between Jason and the other woman, the anger, the hurt. I could almost hear the shouts, the desperation in their voices. "No, Jason, don't go," I cried out, but the scene continued to unfold before us. "Stop," Sarah shouted, her hands pressed against her temples. "I don't want to see this," but it was too late. The truth was unraveling before us, raw and unfiltered. Jason had been consumed by a toxic love, caught in a web of lies and secrets that had spiraled out of control. Each of us had played a part in his torment, whether intentionally or not. "Why didn't you tell us?" Tyler's voice quaked with emotion. "Why didn't you reach out?" "I tried." The voice of Jason echoed, filled with sorrow, but I felt trapped. I didn't want to burden you with my struggles. I thought I could handle it alone. Tears streamed down my face as I grappled with the weight of his words. "We would have been there for you, Jason. You didn't have to face this alone." "I know that now," he replied, "but you all must learn to forgive yourselves. My death was not your fault." As the visions continued, I felt a surge of energy in the room, like a storm brewing just beneath the surface. "We can't change what happened," I said, my voice breaking, "but we can honor your memory by being better, by being there for each other." "Exactly." Jason's voice resonated with clarity. "You must let go of the guilt that binds you. Only then can my spirit find peace, and yours as well." Suddenly, the room began to tremble, the walls vibrating as if the mansion itself were responding to Jason's plea. I gripped Tyler's hand tightly, fear coursing through me. "What's happening?" I shouted over the cacophony. "It's the energy of our emotions," he replied, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. "We need to focus. We have to release this pain." "Everyone listen," I called out, my voice rising above the chaos. "We need to let go together. Let's say it out loud. Let's forgive ourselves for Jason's sake." "Jason, I'm so sorry for not being there for you," Sarah shouted, her voice cracking. "I should have fought harder to keep you safe." "I'm sorry too," Tyler chimed in, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I should have reached out. I should have been a better friend." As each person voiced their regrets, the energy in the room intensified, and I could feel the weight lifting from my chest. "I forgive you, Jason," I cried, my heart racing. "I forgive you for leaving us, and I forgive myself for not seeing the signs." The room erupted in a chorus of voices, all of us pleading for forgiveness, for understanding, for peace. "I forgive you," we shouted in unison, and with each word, the vibrations grew stronger, illuminating the room with a brilliant light. Suddenly, the light coalesced into a figure. Jason stood before us, his expression serene. "Thank you," he whispered, and I could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You freed me. Now it's time to let go." As the light enveloped him, I felt a rush of emotion wash over me. The pain, the guilt, the lingering sadness. Everything began to fade away, replaced by a sense of calm and acceptance. "Goodbye, Jason," I whispered, my heart swelling with love. "We'll remember you always." And just like that, he was gone. The room fell silent, and the vibrations subsided, leaving us in a tranquil stillness. I opened my eyes, looking around at the faces of my friends, each one reflecting a mixture of relief and sorrow. "Did we really just?" Tyler began, his voice trailing off in disbelief. "I think we did," I replied, my heart lighter than it had been in days. "I think we finally set him free." As we stood there in the dim light of the mansion, I knew our journey wasn't over. The past would always echo in our lives, but we had taken the first step toward healing. Together, we would carry Jason's memory with us, honoring his spirit by being there for one another, just as he would have wanted. In that moment, I realized that even in the depths of sorrow, there's a glimmer of hope waiting to be uncovered. We were bound by our shared pain, yet united in our love for Jason. And as we stood together in that haunted mansion, I felt a sense of peace begin to blossom within us all. The mansion felt alive, almost pulsating with a dark energy that made my skin crawl. A storm raged outside, and the wind howled like a banshee, shaking the very foundations of this eerie place. I could hear the thunder rumbling ominously, each crack echoing like a warning. My heart raced as I stood in the dimly lit hallway, surrounded by the remnants of memories that belonged to Jason. Every piece of decor whispered stories of laughter, joy, and, now, unbearable sorrow. "Emily, we need to figure this out," Tyler said beside me, his voice barely rising above the sound of the wind. His brow was furrowed in concentration, but I could see the fear hidden behind his resolve. I nodded, but my mind was swirling with confusion and dread. "What if we can't?" I whispered, feeling a shiver dance down my spine. I could almost hear Jason's voice, echoing through the halls, pleading for us to understand. The thought made my heart ache. "We have to try," Tyler urged, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. For Jason, the other guests, once lively friends of Jason, were now mere shadows of themselves, their spirits dampened by grief and regret. I watched as Sarah stood off to the side, her face pale and drawn, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She was lost in her own world of memories, perhaps haunted by her own demons. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to slice through, as if the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. A loud crash of thunder resonated through the mansion, shaking the walls and sending a shiver through me. I turned to Tyler, my eyes wide. "Did you hear that? It's like the house is alive." Tyler nodded, his jaw set tightly. "Yeah, and it doesn't feel good. Something is off here. We need to focus on Jason and what he wants from us." As we moved further into the mansion, the atmosphere grew heavier. It was as if the walls were closing in on us, and I could feel the weight of Jason's loss pressing down on my chest. Each step I took felt like a step deeper into a grave, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "Do you think he's here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Do you think Jason is trying to reach us?" "I don't know," Tyler admitted, his eyes scanning the room as if expecting to see Jason's ghost appear at any moment. "But I can feel something, presence, and it's not just the memories." We entered a large room that had once been a gathering place for laughter and camaraderie. The furniture was old and covered in dust, but remnants of happiness lingered. A cracked photo of Jason and his friends on the mantelpiece, the echo of their laughter still hanging in the air. But that laughter was now replaced by a somber silence that screamed of unfinished business. "Emily," Tyler said suddenly, his voice low and urgent, "what if we, I don't know, what if we try to connect with him? Maybe he has something to say." My heart raced at the idea. "You mean like a seance? Here? Now? Why not? We need to confront this," he replied, his determination shining through the fear in his eyes. I hesitated, glancing around the room. The atmosphere felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. Okay, but what if it goes wrong? Tyler shrugged, his expression unwavering. We won't know unless we try, and we can't keep running from this. All right? I murmured, though uncertainty gnawed at my insides. What do? We just need to focus on Jason. We need to call him and see if he'll respond. Tyler instructed, his voice steady. We found a couple of candles resting on an old table. Their wax dripped and hardened over time. As Tyler lit them, the flickering flames cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls, creating an almost surreal atmosphere. I took a deep breath, feeling both excited and terrified. Jason, Tyler said, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. If you're here, we want to talk to you. We need to understand what happened. For a moment, silence enveloped us, the only sound the soft crackling of the flames. I could feel the weight of the air around us, thick and heavy, as if the mansion itself was listening. Jason, we miss you, I added, my voice quivering. Please, if you can hear us, give us a sign. The storm outside intensified, a clap of thunder shaking the windows, and I felt a chill run through the room. Then, as if in response, the candles flickered violently, casting long shadows that twisted and turned. A wave of energy surged through me, and I gasped, feeling a presence enveloping us. Emily? Tyler breathed, his eyes wide with shock. Did you feel that? Yes, I whispered, my voice barely audible. It's like he's here with us. Suddenly, the air shifted, and I caught a glimpse of a figure in the corner of my eye. My heart raced. Jason! There was no response, just the sound of the storm growing louder, drowning out my thoughts. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the connection. Jason, please, we want to help you. The room grew colder, and I felt a rush of wind sweep through, extinguishing one of the candles. I opened my eyes to see Tyler staring at me, his face pale. Did you see that? He asked, his voice shaky. I nodded, swallowing hard. He's here. I can feel him. Jason, if you're here, we need you to show us what happened that night. Tyler called again, his voice firm. We need to know the truth. Another blast of thunder echoed through the mansion, and the remaining candle flickered wildly, casting ominous shadows on the walls. I could feel the energy in the room shifting, as if something was trying to break through. Then I saw him. A shimmering figure appeared in the corner, his features blurred, almost like a mirage. It was Jason, but he looked different, his eyes filled with sadness and longing. Jason, I gasped, tears welling in my eyes. Is that really you? He nodded slowly, the movement almost imperceptible. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of fear and hope flooding through me. What do you want us to know? Tyler asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Jason opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he raised a hand, gesturing for us to follow him. The air around us crackled with energy as he began to fade in and out, his presence flickering like the dying flame of a candle. Where are you going? I cried out, desperate to hold on to this moment. Please, don't leave us. He pointed toward a door at the far end of the room, and I felt a sudden urge to follow. I exchanged a glance with Tyler, who nodded, determination etched on his face. Let's go, he said, and together we moved toward the door, the weight of what lay ahead pressing down on us. As we approached the door, the temperature dropped even further, and I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ward off the chill. Tyler reached for the doorknob, his hand trembling slightly. Are you ready? He asked, looking back at me. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. As ready as I'll ever be. With a turn of the knob, the door creaked open, revealing a darkened room filled with shadows. The atmosphere was thick and suffocating, and I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. Inside, the air was heavy with memories, and I could sense that we were about to uncover something profound. Jason's presence felt stronger now, guiding us into the depths of his past. Stay close, Tyler whispered, and I nodded, my heart pounding as we stepped into the darkness together. The room was filled with old furniture and dust-covered keepsakes, relics of a time long gone. In the corner, a faded photograph caught my eye. I walked over, brushing away the dust to reveal a picture of Jason with Sarah, both laughing, their eyes sparkling with happiness. "Look at this," I said softly, holding it up for Tyler to see. They were so happy. Tyler frowned, his expression darkening. But what happened? Why did it all go wrong? As if in response, a gust of wind swept through the room, sending shivers down my spine. I could feel Jason's energy swirling around us, urging us to dig deeper. "Jason, please," I called out, my voice trembling with emotion. "What do you want us to understand?" The shadows seemed to flicker and dance, and I felt a sudden rush of images flooding my mind. Fragments of memories, moments of joy intertwined with pain. I saw Jason's face, twisted in anguish, and I realized he was trapped in this cycle of sorrow, unable to move on. "Tyler, he's hurting," I said, my voice breaking. "He feels trapped here because of what happened." "I know," Tyler replied, a mix of determination and sadness in his tone. "We need to help him find peace." The storm outside raged on, the sound of thunder shaking the walls as we continued to sift through the memories. I could feel Jason's presence growing stronger, his energy wrapping around us like a comforting embrace. The air in the mansion was electric, charged with a tension that felt almost tangible. I stood in the dimly lit parlor, surrounded by the remnants of laughter that had once filled these walls, now replaced by a heavy silence punctuated only by the sound of the storm raging outside. The flickering candlelight cast shadows that danced across the faces of the guests, each one a mask of fear, guilt, and sorrow. Tyler was beside me, his hand gripping mine tightly, as if he were afraid I would be swallowed by the darkness. "Emily, are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He was looking at me, his blue eyes filled with concern. "I don't know if confronting Jason's spirit is the right thing to do." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I have to do this, Tyler. For him, for us. We need to find out what he wants. I can feel it in my bones. He's still here, trapped." He nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt lingering in his expression. I could feel it too, the gnawing uncertainty that had been clawing at my insides since we arrived. But I couldn't let fear stop me. I had already lost Jason once. I wouldn't walk away again without trying to understand. As if summoned by our thoughts, the atmosphere shifted. A chill ran through the room, and the candles flickered violently as though caught in an unseen breeze. I could almost hear Jason's voice, a soft whisper that beckoned to me from beyond the veil. "Emily?" It was an echo, a plea that sent shivers down my spine. "Let's do this," I said, my determination hardening. Tyler took a deep breath, and I could see him steeling himself for what was to come. We moved into the center of the room, where the other guests had gathered, their expressions a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Sarah stood nearby, her eyes red and puffy from crying, and I could see the guilt etched on her face. It was clear she had her own demons to confront. "Are you ready?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "No," she replied, her voice trembling, "but I can't run away anymore." As the storm raged outside, I felt an overwhelming impulse to reach out to Jason's spirit. "Jason," I called out, my voice louder now, resonating through the room. "If you can hear me, please show yourself. We need to understand." The room fell silent, and for a long moment nothing happened. I glanced around at the others. Their faces were a mixture of hope and fear. Tyler squeezed my hand tighter, grounding me in the moment. Then, as if in response to my plea, the temperature in the room plummeted, and a soft glow began to form in the corner. "Emily?" The voice was clearer now, more distinct. It resonated through the air like a distant melody, pulling at the strings of my heart. "Jason!" I cried out, my voice trembling with emotion. "What do you want from us? Why are you still here?" The glow intensified, and suddenly, Jason appeared before us. He looked just as I remembered, His dark hair tousled and those piercing green eyes filled with a mix of sadness and longing. But there was something else, a heaviness that hung over him, a burden that seemed to weigh him down. "Emily," he said, his voice a soft whisper that echoed in the stillness. "I've been waiting for this moment, for you to understand." "Understand what?" I demanded, tears welling in my eyes. I wanted to reach out to him, to touch his face and feel his warmth, but I knew he was beyond my reach. "What do you need us to know?" He glanced around at the others, his expression shifting to one of deep sorrow. "You all carry your own guilt. You think you could have saved me, but the truth is far more complicated. I was lost long before that night." "Lost?" Tyler interjected, his voice rising in disbelief. "You were our friend, Jason. We loved you. How could you not know that?" Jason turned to him, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and pain. "You loved me, yes, but I was drowning in my own despair. I felt like I was the only one who couldn't breathe. I pushed you all away." The guilt in the room was palpable, and I could see the weight of his words settling on everyone. Sarah took a step forward, her voice trembling. "Jason, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought we could find our way back to each other. I never meant for things to end like this." "I know," he replied softly, his gaze lingering on her. "But the choices we make can lead us down paths we never intended to travel." That night, it was a culmination of everything. The arguments, the lies, they all contributed to my fate. "Fate," I echoed, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. "You had a choice, Jason. You didn't have to leave us." He looked at me, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the boy I fell in love with, the one who made me laugh, the one who held my hand in the dark. "I thought I was protecting you all by leaving. I thought I could spare you the pain of my existence. By dying." Tyler's voice cracked, and I could see the anguish on his face. "You didn't spare us anything, Jason. You left us with a void that can never be filled." Jason's expression softened, and I could see the remorse etched in his features. I didn't know how to ask for help. I was afraid of being a burden, but I see now that I was wrong. I should have reached out, should have trusted you. The storm outside raged on, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us. "What do you want from us, Jason?" I asked, my voice breaking. "How can we help you find peace?" He hesitated, glancing at the others. "You must confront your own truths. Each of you carries a piece of the puzzle. Only by facing your regrets can you help me move on." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You must speak your truths," he urged, his voice rising with urgency. "Let go of the burdens you carry. Only then can I be free." As he spoke, the air thickened, and I could feel an overwhelming pressure building around us. I looked at Tyler, and I could see the fear in his eyes. "We need to do this," I said, my heart racing. "We need to let our truths out." Tyler nodded slowly, and I could see him gathering his courage. "I'll go first," he said, stepping forward. "Jason, I should have been there for you. I was so wrapped up in my own life that I didn't see the signs. I was a terrible friend." "Tyler, no?" I started to protest, but he held up a hand. "No, let me finish," he insisted, his voice trembling with emotion. "I should have reached out. I should have made sure you knew you weren't alone. I'm so sorry." Jason's expression softened, and he nodded. "Thank you, Tyler. Your honesty means more than you know." Next, Sarah stepped forward, her hands shaking. "I never meant to hurt you, Jason. I was so caught up in my own feelings that I didn't see how much you were struggling. I thought you would always be there, that we would always have time to figure things out." "I know," Jason replied, his voice steady, "but time is a cruel illusion. We must cherish every moment we have with those we love." One by one, the guests began to share their truths, each confession releasing a weight that had been buried deep within them. I watched as they poured out their regrets, their fears, and their sorrows, each word a step toward healing. Finally, it was my turn. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their gazes on me. "Jason," I began, my voice trembling, I've carried so much guilt since that night. I should have told you how much you meant to me. I should have fought harder to keep you in my life. I let fear dictate my actions, and I hate myself for it." Jason's eyes softened as he looked at me. "You were never to blame, Emily. You were my light, even in my darkest moments. I wish I could have seen how much you cared." Tears streamed down my face as I continued. "But it's too late now. I can't change the past. I just want you to know that I loved you then, and I love you now. I wish I could have saved you." His expression turned pained, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "Emily, the love you had for me was never wasted, but you must learn to forgive yourself. It's the only way I can find peace." As the last of our truths hung in the air, the atmosphere shifted again. The storm outside raged on, but in that moment, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. Jason's spirit seemed to brighten, and I could see the weight beginning to lift from his shoulders. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You've given me the strength to finally let go. But there's one last thing you must promise me to live fully. Don't let my loss haunt you. Live, love, and cherish those around you. I promise," as thunder rumbled overhead, shaking the very foundations of the mansion. The storm outside mirrored the chaos stirring within its walls. I could feel the tension in the air, a palpable weight resting heavily on my chest. Tyler and I had just confronted the truth about Jason's death, a truth that had been buried beneath layers of guilt and secrets. The revelation that someone in this very room had a hand in his demise hung over us like a dark cloud, threatening to burst at any moment. "Emily, we need to get everyone out of here," Tyler said urgently, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the faces of those who had been our friends, our acquaintances, now reduced to a collection of terrified strangers. "Do you think they'll listen?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. I glanced at the group, their expressions ranging from shock to anger, each person grappling with their own revelations and the weight of their shared past with Jason. "Honestly, I don't know," Tyler admitted, his brow furrowing. "But we have to try. If we don't, we might all end up trapped here forever." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the mansion as a bolt of lightning struck nearby. The lights flickered wildly, casting strange shadows that danced across the walls. I could hear the panicked murmurs of the guests as they began to realize the gravity of our situation. "Everyone listen," I shouted, forcing my voice to rise above the chaos. "We need to get out now. The storm is getting worse, and this place isn't safe." A few heads turned, but most were still lost in their own turmoil. Sarah, standing at the edge of the group, clutched her arms tightly around her body. Her eyes were wide with fear. "What do you mean not safe?" she asked, her voice shaking. "We can't leave. We need to talk about what happened." "Talk about what?" "How one of us is responsible for Jason's death." I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "We can do that later. Right now, we're in danger." The wind howled outside, rattling the windows as if trying to break through. I could see panic settling in, and I felt the urgency in my bones. Tyler stepped forward, trying to calm the growing hysteria. "Sarah, I know this is hard, but we need to prioritize our safety. Jason wouldn't want us to die here. He wouldn't want this for any of us. Stop trying to brush this under the rug," one of the other guests yelled, her voice rising above the din. "We owe it to Jason to face the truth. He deserves justice. Justice won't matter if we're dead." Tyler shot back, his patience wearing thin. I could see the tension escalating, anger and blame weaving through the crowd like a deadly thread. "Enough!" I shouted again, my voice cracking. "We can't afford to fight among ourselves. We need to work together if we're going to survive this." Just then, the lights flickered one last time before plunging us into darkness. A collective gasp filled the room, and I felt Tyler's hand grip mine tightly. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Where do we go?" I asked, my heart racing. "Follow me," he replied, and we began to navigate the pitch-black mansion, the sound of thunder echoing behind us. As we moved through the darkened hallways, I could hear the panicked voices of the others behind us, their fear palpable in the air. The mansion felt alive, as if it were breathing with us, its walls whispering secrets long forgotten. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the room we had just left. "What was that?" I exclaimed, my heart racing. "Just keep moving," Tyler urged, pulling me along. We stumbled into what I recognized as Jason's old study, the air thick with dust and memories. "Where do we go from here?" I asked, feeling a sense of dread settle over me. "We need to find a way out," Tyler said, scanning the room. "There should be a back entrance somewhere." As we searched, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "Do you feel that?" I whispered, my skin prickling with unease. "What?" Tyler asked, his brow furrowing. "It's like, I don't know, like something is here with us," I said, glancing over my shoulder. "Just the storm, he reassured me, though I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. Then, another crash echoed through the mansion, followed by screams. "We need to hurry," I urged, adrenaline surging through me. We pushed through the darkened hallways, Tyler leading the way. Suddenly, we stumbled into the main hall, where chaos reigned. Guests were shouting, some were crying, and others were trying to force open doors that were either locked or blocked. "What's happening?" I shouted over the commotion. "The windows won't budge," someone cried, panic evident in their voice. "Help us!" Another voice called out, desperation ringing in their tone. "Get back!" I heard Tyler shout, pushing through the crowd. "We have to stay together." I felt a surge of panic as I searched for Sarah, who was still standing by the entrance, looking lost. "Sarah," I called out, rushing toward her. "I can't find my way. I can't," she stammered, her eyes wide with terror. "Just hold my hand," I urged, grabbing her wrist. "We'll get out of here together." The storm raged outside, and I could feel the walls of the mansion trembling. The atmosphere was thick with fear, and it felt as if the very air was charged with electricity. "Everyone listen," Tyler shouted again, trying to regain control. "We need to head toward the back of the house. There should be a service exit there." "Are you sure?" someone shouted back, doubt lacing their words. "Yes," Tyler insisted, his voice unwavering. "If we don't move now, we're going to be trapped." The group hesitated for a moment, but the urgency in Tyler's voice was enough to spur them into action. We began to push through the crowd, a mix of fear and determination driving us forward. As we made our way through the mansion, I could feel the walls closing in. The storm outside seemed to echo our turmoil, a foreboding reminder of the danger lurking just beyond our reach. "Keep going," Tyler urged, his grip on my hand tightening as we navigated through the narrow hallways. Then, suddenly, the floor beneath us shook violently. We all stumbled, crashing into one another as the sound of splintering would fill the air. "What's happening?" I screamed, fear clawing at my throat. "The house is coming down," someone yelled in panic. "Run," Tyler shouted, pulling me along as we raced toward the back of the mansion. We pushed through the last doorway, and I could see the faint light of the storm outside. "There it is. Keep moving," I urged, my heart racing with hope. As we rushed toward the exit, I glanced back, catching a glimpse of the chaos we were leaving behind. The guests were now a mass of fear and confusion, some still shouting, some frozen in place. "Emily, hurry," Tyler shouted, pulling me closer. We burst through the door, stumbling into the stormy night. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking us instantly. I gasped for air, feeling the coolness of the rain wash over my skin. "Keep going," Tyler urged, and we sprinted away from the crumbling mansion. Behind us, I could hear the sound of wood splintering and glass shattering. The mansion seemed to groan in agony, as if it were mourning the secrets it had held for so long. We reached a safe distance, but I couldn't bring myself to look back. The storm raged around us, lightning illuminating the night sky as I felt a heavy weight settle in my chest. "We did it," Tyler said, panting beside me. "We got out." "Did we?" I murmured, my eyes fixed on the dark silhouette of the mansion as it stood defiantly against the storm. "What do you mean?" Tyler asked, concern etching his features. "We escaped, but what about everyone else?" I whispered, feeling a sense of guilt wash over me. "They'll find their way out," he assured me, though I could see the doubt in his eyes. As I stood there, shivering in the rain, I couldn't shake the feeling that the echoes of our past would forever haunt us. The storm may have passed, but the memories of that night, the secrets, the pain, the loss would linger on, forever etched in our minds. "Emily?" Tyler began, but I cut him off. "I know we survived, but it feels like we lost something tonight," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we lost the illusion of the past," Tyler replied softly, his gaze fixed on the rain-soaked ground. "But we have each other. That's what matters." I nodded, though the weight in my heart felt heavier than ever. Together, we turned away from the ruins of the mansion, knowing that while we had escaped the storm, the ghosts of the past would continue to echo in our lives, a haunting reminder of what we had lost.